You won't believe what happened when my own driveway got taken over by the HOA. Yeah, the spot I park in every single day suddenly became community event parking. I came home one afternoon to find cones lined up, strangers pulling in, and a big sign saying, "Reserved for HOA guests." My name wasn't on it, my permission wasn't asked, and my car blocked out like I didn't live there. I stood there in total disbelief. This wasn't just annoying, it felt like my own. Space had been hijacked. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe a one-time thing. So I reached out to the HOA, calmly, just trying to understand. But they told me it was part of a new community outreach initiative, and my driveway happened to be the most convenient for overflow parking. Convenient for them, sure, but what about me? They said it'd only be for occasional events, but guess what? Those events kept happening. More cars, more people I didn't know, sometimes even late at night. I couldn't relax in my own home without wondering who was outside or when I'd get blocked in or out. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to sit back and watch my property turn into a public lot. I needed to protect my space, legally, safely, but firmly. So I did what I had to do. I built a gate, nothing fancy, just enough to send a message. This is mine. But people still tried. So next came the spikes. Not dangerous, not illegal, just a little extra reminder that this wasn't for anyone else to roll through. What happened next, though? That's where things really took a turn, because as soon as that gate went up, the HOA wasn't just knocking, they were ready to fight back. And let me tell you, they didn't hold back. The first letter showed up just a few days after I installed the gate. It looked official, fancy letterhead, legal-sounding language, the whole deal. They claimed I was violating community standards and had modified my property without prior approval. The weird part? My driveway wasn't even listed as shared space in the original HOA documents. I double-checked, then triple-checked. Still, they kept insisting I had no right to restrict community access to my own driveway during their events. It was surreal. Neighbors started acting strange, too. People I used to wave to stopped making eye contact. Some started whispering when I walked by. One even left a folded note under my windshield, saying I was bringing bad energy to the neighborhood. Seriously? All because I wanted to park on my own property? It felt like I'd stepped into some strange version of suburbia, where keeping things orderly was more important than basic respect. Then the warnings started. First, it was fines. $25 for the gate, $50 for the unauthorized. Deterrents, meaning the spikes. I appealed every one of them. No response, just more letters, more threats. I even went to the next HOA meeting, thinking I could explain everything in person. But when I showed up, they wouldn't let me speak. They said the agenda was full. Full of what, though? Because most of the meeting was just small talk and some announcements about a new flower bed near the entrance. By this point, I knew something deeper was going on. This wasn't just about my driveway. It felt personal. Almost like the HOA wanted to make an example out of me. But I wasn't backing down. I started documenting everything, keeping records, even setting up a camera to watch the front yard. And that's when I caught something on video that made my stomach drop. The footage from the camera was grainy, but clear enough. Around 11:30, at night, two people, hoods up, moving quickly, walked straight up to the gate. One of them tried lifting it. The other pulled out something from their pocket, maybe a tool, and started messing with the hinges. They gave up after a few minutes and walked off, but not before kicking the spikes and tossing something small over the fence. The next morning, I found a crushed soda can and a little handwritten note that said, "Not your property anymore." No name, just that. I sent the footage to the HOA, hoping it would finally open their eyes. Instead, they hit me with another violation. This time, security installation causing visual disruption to the community aesthetic. Basically, they were calling my camera an eyesore. At that point, I didn't know if I should laugh or scream. I wasn't breaking any laws. In fact, everything I'd done, gate, spikes, camera, was well within my rights. But somehow, they kept twisting the rules. The weirdest part? A few other neighbors quietly told me they were having their own issues with the HOA. One had been warned for putting up solar panels. Another got fined for having a garden bed that wasn't on the approved color palette. It started to feel like this wasn't just about me, it was about control. And anyone who didn't fall in line got a target on their back. Still, nobody wanted to speak up. Most were scared of retaliation, like losing access to amenities or getting dragged into months of fines and letters. Some said it wasn't worth the stress. But for me, it had already gone too far. My driveway wasn't just concrete. It was a symbol of how far this HOA was willing to go to assert power. And things were about to escalate even more when I found out who was really behind the push to keep using my space. I finally got a name. It came from a neighbor I'd known for years, someone who'd always stayed out of HOA stuff but had seen enough to start asking questions. He told me the person pushing hardest behind closed doors to keep my driveway open for event parking was none other than the HOA vice president. The kicker? Her daughter lived 2 streets over and had been throwing weekly get-togethers with her friends, using my driveway and the one across from mine as their personal overflow lot. It had nothing to do with community events. It was personal convenience disguised as policy. That changed everything. Suddenly, it all made sense. The urgency, the constant letters, the way the rules kept shifting. But what really set me off was learning she'd never disclosed the conflict of interest to the rest of the board. I started asking around, and most of the members had no idea her daughter was using the space. A few looked shocked, others just shrugged. One even told me, "That's just how things work around here." Around that same time, I noticed the tension in the neighborhood getting worse. A few folks who'd once been friendly wouldn't even look at me anymore. One neighbor parked his truck halfway across my driveway for an entire weekend, pretending it was a mistake. Another sent an anonymous complaint to the HOA about my hostile attitude. It felt like they were trying to wear me down, isolate me, get me to give up. But I wasn't backing off. I gathered every letter, every photo, every video clip. I started drafting a formal complaint, real legal stuff this time. I was done playing their game. The gate stayed locked, the spikes stayed put, and I installed a second camera, one with night vision and motion alerts. Then came the night everything reached a boiling point. A knock at the door, past midnight. No announcement. Just silence and shadows moving outside. I didn't know who it was, but I had a feeling this wasn't just about parking anymore. I stood behind the door, heart racing. Whoever was out there wasn't saying a word, just standing still. I checked the camera feed on my phone. 2 people again. Same build, same hoods. But this time, one of them had something in their hand that looked like a clipboard or folder. Not a weapon, but it didn't exactly feel official either. I didn't open the door. I watched. After a minute, they turned and left, slipping a thick envelope under the welcome mat before disappearing into the night. Inside the envelope was a cease and desist letter, this one not from the HOA, but from a law firm. A real one. They were threatening legal action for harassment and intimidation, claiming I was using excessive measures to block community access and creating an unwelcoming environment. The firm's name matched one I'd seen before, on a flyer for a property management group connected to our HOA president's business. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about driveways and parking anymore. There was money involved. Turns out, the HOA board had been in talks with that same property management group to upgrade the neighborhood, bring in more organized events, and possibly increase home values. But for that to work, they needed access to a few key areas, like my driveway, which sat right at the entrance of the cul-de-sac. They hadn't told any of the homeowners yet, but I found references buried in the last HOA financial update, tucked behind pages of unrelated notes. It wasn't just shady, it was strategic. And I was the one thing in their way. Now I wasn't just fighting a bad policy, I was up against a network of people with money, influence, and a plan. And they weren't playing fair. Suddenly, neighbors weren't just neighbors. They were eyes and ears. My cameras caught a few new faces walking by and snapping photos of my property. One even leaned down to take a picture of the spikes. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I came home to find the gate wide open, the spikes removed and fresh tire marks across the driveway. I froze when I saw the open gate. The lock was gone, completely snapped off, and the spikes I had carefully bolted down were nowhere in sight. It looked like someone had taken their time removing everything, not in a hurry, not hiding it. Just bold. Like they wanted me to know they could. My stomach turned. I reviewed the footage again, but this time, nothing. Both cameras were blacked out for nearly an hour. Power cut right at the source box in the garage. Someone had planned this. I called the police and filed a report. It was technically trespassing, maybe even vandalism. But without clear footage, and no witnesses, they said there wasn't much they could do. The officer gave me that look, you know the one, like I was making too big a deal out of something neighborly. But this wasn't about being a difficult neighbor anymore. This was intimidation, plain and simple. So I pushed back harder. I compiled every document, every email, the video clips, photos, witness statements from the few neighbors who still had my back. And I filed a formal complaint, not just with the HOA, but with the state's Consumer Affairs Board. I even hired a local attorney who specialized in HOA abuse cases. She told me I wasn't alone. Apparently, this kind of thing was happening more than anyone liked to admit. She helped me draft a cease and desist of my own, this time backed by actual legal grounds. The final showdown came during a special HOA board meeting. I walked in with my lawyer at my side, binder in hand, and laid it all out. The conflict of interest, the illegal property access, the broken security equipment, everything. The board went quiet. The vice president didn't say a word, just sat there, pale, eyes wide. That same week, she resigned. The law firm backed off. The fines were dropped. And I got written confirmation that my driveway was off limits to everyone but me. But just when I thought it was over, I got one last envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo, grainy, printed on cheap paper. It was me, standing in my driveway. Taken from the woods behind my house. I stared at that photo for a long time. It wasn't dramatic, just a blurry shot of me in my hoodie, taking out the trash. But knowing someone had been back there, watching me after everything that had happened, sent a chill through me. I turned it over. Nothing written on the back, no threats, no message, just silence. I handed it off to my lawyer and filed another report with the local police. Again, there wasn't much they could do, but having it on record felt necessary. After that, things finally calmed down. The HOA held a new election. A few board members stepped down, and some fresh faces took their places. People who actually wanted to help the neighborhood, not control it. They agreed to review the bylaws and add stronger protections for private property owners. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been dealing with overreach. My fight made others speak up, and slowly, the mood in the neighborhood shifted. Rebuilt the gate, reinforced it this time. No more spikes. I didn't need them anymore. Just a solid reminder that I wasn't backing down. The cameras stayed up. I still check the footage every now and then, but I haven't seen anything suspicious since. Looking back, I never expected a simple driveway dispute to turn into something this big. It started with a parking issue, but it uncovered something deeper. How power, when unchecked, can twist something as ordinary as an HOA into something unrecognizable. I stood my ground, not just for a patch of concrete, but for the principle that no one should feel unsafe in their own home. So yeah, if your HOA tries to take over your driveway, make sure you know your rights. Because sometimes, it's not just about where you park, it's about where you stand.